UBI, Universal Basic Income, what it is and why it is so important. Now, first of all, let's say there are 10 people in a city. We consider a very small city with just 10 people. 5 of them have decent jobs. They can earn their livelihood well. But the other 5 are based on, let's say, daily wages. Today they get the job. They have something to eat. Tomorrow they don't. They don't have anything to eat. So what should be done in such a scenario? In such a scenario, what is proposed is a UBI or a universal basic income, a minimum income which is required for sustenance of life, and that is what is called as a fixed amount that should be paid to all adult citizens. Now note, this is not based on your family, this is based on an individual adult citizen of the nation. Why? Because let's say you have a family of 4 people. Now, how do we understand who is part of which family becomes a difficult task? But for an individual identification, this is very simpler. So, the things could be linked to social security or your social identification number. For example, in India, it's Aadhaar. Now, what happens is, with universal basic income, you are assuring that poverty by all means should be removed. A minimum level of food and basic social needs would be provided to an individual, and most importantly, all other social needs program could be slowly and gradually wiped off. So let's say we move with midday meals scheme, we move with the Aadhaar linked schemes for gas subsidies, we move with schemes with food or nutrition programs. So all those separate programs that are there could be slowly and gradually removed, and a universal basic income could be given to each of the individual to bring everyone at a minimum level of living, and they should be assured with minimum food supplies that is there. Now this idea gained momentum during the time specifically when automation industries started to rise in United States. The simple reason was, with automation, or what we call as Industrial Revolution 4.0, lots and lots of jobs started to vanish, and with the decreasing number of jobs, the unemployment level soared, and this rising level of unemployment made it necessary to have some kind of security for the common people that are part of that nation. So if we focus on to the history of UBI or the Universal Basic Income, this was initially proposed in 16th century by a scholar called as Thomas More, and his ideas were what were known as a utopian world where everyone should be at a level playing platform. However, later during the time of American Revolution, Thomas Paine worked forward to a concept of UBI for everyone, be it rich, be it poor. So that means everyone should have a basic support that should be provided by the institution or the governments. Later, Martin Luther King talked about the concept of guaranteed income in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? A Chaos or a Community. So the idea was, if we are not providing a universal basic income, there could be a situation which could be highly chaotic in nature. In order to avoid that, we should move towards the path of community building, and therefore this idea of guaranteed income was proposed. Now, the whole idea revolves about two things. First is eliminating poverty by all means, reducing the government expenditure on other social needs program. But if everyone has to be given the universal basic income, it would cost the government a lot of funds. And where would they come from? Ultimately, they would be borne by the taxes that the individual players are paying. So there has been lot of political gambit, we could say, around the issues whether UBI should be proposed in a nation or not. We have seen nations where UBI has been planned as a successful event. However, the cases slowly and gradually decline. For example, Finland is one of the classic examples that experimented with UBI but later on removed it. In China, Shenzhen is one of the regions where UBI is proposed in the form of providing basic food and living and dwelling for the citizens there. But there are inborn criticisms with UBI. What are those? Firstly, it would bear a high cost to the governments, and that would be ultimately in the form of taxation that the government has to bear, and the deficit with the governments could increase over a longer duration of time, and with rising deficits the government could have a crunch of the funds to be invested for other programs and other measures that are to be there. So first most important reason, or we could say criticism, of universal basic income is the high cost that the government has to bear. And the second most debated thing is this would incentivize the work culture. Since the people would be getting certain money in hand, they won't be motivated to work further. So that is one of the most popular concepts that revolve around the criticism of UBI. But on the other hand, there has been a debate on this disincentivization of work, which says that with UBI, a person would have a universal basic income, a basic income for living. So what they can think about is probably more innovation, which is a kind of opposition of the disincentivization of work. They say that there could be more innovations because they have certain level of securities with them, and also they won't be after catching the first job that is being offered to them, just because if there is no UBI, there is high level of insecurity and they would be in a position to get hold for the first job that is there. But if UBI is there, they can explore their potentials to the fullest and take time to achieve a good and a decent job. So those are some of the viewpoints that are there. But definitely there has to be something that has to be rolled out, and specifically after the pandemic where the basic minimum wages have been declining, the unemployments have been soaring, there has to be some viable, some feasible way that has to be brought in. Along with the pandemic, automation, as we already said, has been a big trigger to the youth and the common economy. So what should be brought, either the UBI or the national basic income, or what is also known as the universal basic income, previously called as social dividend. So those are some of the things, or some alternate method should be brought into place with an immediate effect. So that was about the very basics of UBI, very popular these days, very important these days, and we would be covering many more topics in current affairs. Stay tuned. Have a wonderful day ahead.